Welcome to Aircast, where we feature military leaders, discuss Air Force ROTC along with their experiences, and uncover the latest in defense and Air Force news. I'm your host, Cadet Captain Parker Lozier, and without further ado, let's get into our segments. Lights on. In this episode of Aircast, Cadet Lambert will be covering military news. I will be interviewing Second Lieutenant Cindy Pinkham on her role as an aerospace physiologist officer. And wrapping it up, Cadet Pilley will interview Cadets Hall, Moeller, Lawson, Hickey, and Brown about the positions they were assigned to fulfill in the United States Air Force and Space Force.
Welcome to the Military News segment, covering the latest in military aviation and defense news. I am Cadet Lambert, and today we've got 3 exciting stories for you from the Air Force, including a look at how they've prepared for future challenges, updates on cutting-edge technology, and some impressive marathon wins. But first, let's start with a special occasion. The U.S. Air Force just celebrated its birthday! That's right, the Air Force marked its 77th birthday on September 18th. Since its creation in 1947, the Air Force has been leading the way in defending our skies, driving innovation, and shaping the future of air power. From its humble beginnings to today's incredible technologies like the F-35 Lightning and the B-21 Raider, the Air Force continues to prove why it's a global leader in military aviation. So a big happy birthday to all the airmen and guardians out there. Speaking of air power, our first story comes from the Air and Space Forces Association's Air, Space, and Cyber Conference, where top military leaders gathered to discuss U.S. preparations for global conflicts. The Air Mobility Commander's new leader, General Johnny Lamontagne, emphasizes the importance of military exercises in the context of great power competition. He pointed out that these exercises, like Mobility Guardian, are key to ensuring the U.S. can project forces across long distances and immediately support them upon arrival. He also stressed the importance of joining exercises with our allies to enhance cooperation and readiness for future missions. Mobility Guardian 2025 will focus on just that, making sure our military and our partners are ready for any global challenge. Next, let's talk about the future of U.S. air power, the B-21 Raider stealth bomber. At the same conference, military and industry leaders gave updates on this cutting-edge aircraft, which will replace the B-1 Lancer and the B-2 Spirit. The B-21 will serve as a major part of the U.S. nuclear triad, providing long-range strike capabilities with both conventional and nuclear weapons. General Thomas Bouzier of Air Force Global Strike Command said the B-21 is undergoing rigorous testing with multiple flights happening each week. Ellsworth Air Force Base in South Dakota will be the first to receive the aircraft, and the Air Force has a goal of producing at least 100 of these bombers. As Bouzier puts it, the B-21's adaptability will keep it ahead of any future threats, giving the U.S. an edge in global security. Finally, we have some incredible performances to celebrate. The 28th Annual Air Force Marathon took place on September 21st at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, and it brought together 7,600 runners from all 50 states and 18 foreign countries. Among them were some top-tier athletes, including our men's marathon winner Nathan Brown, a staff sergeant from March Air Reserve Base, California. He took first place with a time of 2 hours, 36 minutes, and 57 seconds. In the women's category, Major Adriana Dong, an instructor pilot from Robins Air Force Base, Georgia, won her race with a time of 3 hours, 13 minutes, and 30 seconds. Both winners praised the crowd support along the race route. This event, which also serves as a Boston Marathon qualifier, would not be possible without the 1,200 volunteers who helped make it happen. That's all for today's military news segment. We will continue to bring you the latest in military and defense news, so stay tuned.
Hey Aircats, this is Cadet Lozier here. Today we have a special guest. It's my cousin, Lieutenant Cindy Pinkham. She is an aerospace physiologist in the United States Air Force, and she is currently at Laughlin Air Force Base in Texas. So starting off, Lieutenant Pinkham, I'd like to hear a bit about your background going from why you decided to join Air Force ROTC, and then how Air Force ROTC treated you, and if you had any like crazy memorable experiences that highlighted your AFROTC career.
Yeah, sure. So I joined Air Force ROTC because my dad was in the Marine Corps for 22 years, so his service kind of inspired me to join. Then we got to talking about college and this and that back in high school, and I ended up applying for the high school ROTC scholarship. I was awarded a 4-year in-state, I think that was the Type 7, and then I changed it to a 3-year Type 2, so I could go out of state. Went to the University of Wyoming. That's where I did all 4 years of AFROTC. And at the University of Wyoming, it was a very small debt. I think the most we ever had while I was there was maybe 70s, and by the time I left, we were down into the 30s. So we were a very tight-knit group. Got a lot of fun hanging out, just doing group events and things of that nature. One of the coolest things that I did there was we went to F.E. Warren Air Force Base over in Cheyenne, which is about 45 minutes away, and we got to ride the Hueys, which they take the missileers out to the different silos with those helicopters, and we got to go on a ride along, and I was sitting on the back side, the seat towards the back side door, and we were flying, I don't know, 50, 100 feet above the ground, doors wide open. It was super fun. That was probably one of the core memories from ROTC, but really just all the people were great, and so I'll have lifelong friends from those 4 years.
Let's talk about your current role as an aerospace physiologist. What is an aerospace physiologist?
That is a very great question, and I was talking with my career field manager, big colonel guy, manages the whole career field. Anyways, he was saying you can describe your job 1,000 times and no one will ever understand what you actually do. So I'll try to give it my best shot here. Aerospace physiology, to put it in simple terms, is teaching pilots how flight affects their body, whether that be G-forces, acceleration, oxygen, or lack thereof. So for student pilots, that's our biggest client. We see them for a week at the very beginning of their training, and we put them through a week of academics, teaching them vision and respiratory circulation, and we go into altitude threats and performance threats and all these different classes. And then in order to pass their physiology training, we stick them in the hypobaric chamber. We take them up to 25,000 feet and have them remove their oxygen mask. At this point, their oxygen in their blood is going to be depleted. They start feeling their symptoms of hypoxia. And once they do this, they put their mask back on. So it's kind of just awareness training. Hey, these are what my symptoms are. If I feel this in an aircraft, something's wrong, I should troubleshoot. We also do a little bit of parachute landing fall techniques and other parachute trainings, but that's the bulk of our training is the hypoxia chamber.
So after commissioning, pretty much every AFSC is tasked with going to a tech school. So what was the first step before going to tech school and then going to tech school? And what did that entail for you as an aerospace physiologist? Like, what did you learn at tech school?
Yeah, so for aerospace physiology, we have 2 classes that run in the fall. So I came in May. I went active duty May. So I just went straight to my unit down here in Del Rio. And I was just hanging out, getting the lay of the land, kind of figuring out how the Air Force works a little bit, learning some aspects of my job, but I couldn't quite do much since I had not graduated tech school. So I went to tech school end of July, just graduated tech school beginning of this month. And that was a 6-week course where basically you learn all the fundamentals of being an aerospace physiologist. They send you through the centrifuge. You run the 7.5 G profile. And then if you pass that, they gave us the opportunity to also run the 9G profile. You learn all of the academics that you teach to your students, as well as a little bit more in-depth of the content and other areas that are pertinent to know as an APO, Aerospace Physiologist Officer. That'll just help you connect with your students more and understand what they go through. So we learn all of those academics. We go through the hypoxia chamber ourselves. So they take us through the whole chamber profile that we do with our students. So we experience our hypoxia symptoms. Then we also run through chamber reactions. So if we had, say, a student has sinus issue, they have pain in their ears, or they have some bubble gut starting to happen, we can handle those situations when we're up there in the chamber. There's also a device called the Reduced Oxygen Breathing Device, the ROBD. It's essentially a flight simulator. It's like the cockpit seat, just with a screen in front. So you fly the simulator with your mask and helmet on, and we change the composition of gases to make you hypoxic rather than taking you up in the chamber. So we got trained on that and experienced our symptoms on the ROBD device. We also do night vision lab because part of the UPT pipeline at Aerospace Phys is a night vision class where we put them in a dark room and teach them about how their eyes adapt or can get interference with the light, lose their built-up night vision, things of that nature. So it's just all of the meat and potatoes of being a aerospace physiologist for 6 weeks at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. It was a great time. I met a lot of great people. You're able to network with all of the other APOs at different bases around the country and even those there at Wright-Pat. So it was just a great time. And then instead of going to basic instructor course, also known as BIC, that's like a 2-month course of how to be a teacher. My class was the first class to just go through a 1-week how to be an instructor course called Elite. So I was right after tech school. I stayed an extra week at Wright-Pat to go to this Elite course, and it was essentially teaching us how to make our classes more student-centered and student involvement, and how to connect with the students a little bit better than just standing up there and reading off a PowerPoint.
What were your most significant challenges that you faced in your tech school, and how did you overcome them?
All of the academics in tech school, that was not really a challenge for me because since I had been at my base for a couple months beforehand, I was able to sit in all the classes. So the academics weren't really a struggle. The centrifuge, however, that one was my big challenge. So we went in week 1, did the 7.5 G profile. I had seen an individual G-lock, gravitational loss of consciousness. I had seen someone G-lock before I had gone in. And so when it was my time, I was running the 7.5 Gs for 15 seconds, and my vision went completely black. And it scared me, and I kept letting go of the stick because I did not know the line between all vision loss and blackout. So my biggest challenge was, all right, I only get one more shot at passing this centrifuge at the end of the course. How do I change my mind, like my mental state, and get physically ready for second round in the fuge? And so we went through a workout profile designed by, I think it's called the Strong Lab. Fancy name for people who make workouts specific for pilots. So they designed a workout for 6 weeks for us to strengthen our legs, strengthen our core, to get stronger and able to sustain the G's we're pulling in the centrifuge. And then the biggest aspect for me was the mental game, because I knew I had the leg strength, but just, I don't know, having the mindset like, don't let go of the stick, just push through, I can do it. My students are going to be doing this, so I need to be able to do it. That's really the big thing that got me through, is just don't let go of the stick, because I need to know what they're going through. And so I was just able to push through, and I ended up passing the 7.5G and the 9G quals.
My buddy and I, Cadet Zane Moeller, for you all Aircats listening to this podcast, we did 7 Gs in the T-38. And I've heard many fighter pilots talk about how 7 Gs is a lot, but the transition from 7 to 9 Gs is so much more substantial and bone crushing. What was your experience going from 7 Gs to 9, and how did that feel?
It was definitely a bigger pull down on the body, because 7 Gs is 7 times force of gravity, so that's 7 times your body weight coming down on you. 9 Gs is 9 times your body weight pulling down on you. I honestly, contrary to what others might think, I thought the 9G profile was easier, because in the 7.5G profile, you have the 5 bladder G suit, which only gives you about 1.5 to 2 Gs of protection. Whereas when you run the 9G profile, you have the A tags, which is like full pants essentially as your G suit, and they tilt the gondola 30 degrees back like the F-16 seat is, just to help with that movement of blood from the heart up to the brain. So it was a lot more weight coming down on me, but I think with the added G suit, I just overall felt that one was easier to pass. So you just really got to buckle down and squeeze your legs to get through the 7.5.
So you have your G suit helping you cope with the G-force that you're experiencing. Is there anything else that you're doing to actively prevent the loss of consciousness when in the centrifuge or flying a jet in general?
Yes. So the G suit helps you, as I said, about 1.5 Gs of protection for the 5 bladder. And then for the better G suit, you get about 3.5 Gs of protection. So that's if you're doing nothing. In theory, you can go up to that level of Gs and still be fine. However, you're not just going to be pulling those little baby numbers in the aircraft. You're going to be pulling a lot higher. So it's called an AGSM, anti-G straining maneuver. And it starts at the feet and you just work your way up. So you have your knees bent at about 120 degrees. You dig your heels in and it acts like you're pulling yourself forward in a rolly chair. Imagine that motion, and you're just pulling those legs. You got the calves engaged, you got your hamstrings engaged, you're squeezing your glutes, and then that's the lower body aspect. Then you got to take a prep breath. So you pull in a breath low into your belly with your diaphragm, and you close your airway off at the glottis, which naturally closes when you swallow. It determines where air and food go, so whether it's going to the lungs or going down the GI tract. Anyways, so you cut off the air in your throat, and then you have your belly pushed out, because the G suit, there's a bladder right there over your abs trying to push into you, so you have to push your abs out to keep the G suit out, to keep your air in. And then you do a 3-second count. 1, 2, 3, breathe. And on the breathe, you're doing a phonetic K sound. So just a very soft K, and you're pushing out as much air as you're going to bring back in. So that way you don't have a net loss of air. And that's every 3 seconds while you're holding your strain with your legs. It's a lot happening all at once. They try to instruct you on it at the fuge, and you get in there and your body just instantly goes into fight or flight mode. And you do this thing where you turtle with your shoulders. You scrunch your neck down, bring the shoulders up, just trying to protect yourself, because foreign environment. And you want to keep that upper body out of the fight, as they always say. So you just want to relax the shoulders, relax the jaw, because if you're constricting your upper body, you're actually cutting off blood flow to your brain, and that contributes to vision loss and passing out.
Pretty crazy stuff right there. Humans are not designed to pull 9, let alone 7 Gs in an aircraft. So thank you for describing the AGSM.
It was a wild ride. And now that I've done it, I'd go back in, but it's scary once it first hits you, that's for sure.
So as an aerospace physiologist, you're required to teach student pilots, even current pilots, when they have problems arise when flying aircraft. So centrifuge isn't the entire limit of that indoctrination into what pilots experience. So what other ways are you training yourself to experience what a fighter pilot, a parachutist, or just regular pilot experiences?
Yep. So as you said, centrifuge, that's not everything. There's actually only one centrifuge for the Air Force at Wright-Patterson, so only one unit trains on that. Granted, we try to prep our student pilots during our acceleration class. We teach them the straining maneuver a little bit, but we save that mostly for the guys actually running the fuge itself. But as far as APOs prepping to understand what the pilots are going through, we go through SEER. We don't do the full thing. We do water survival and the resistance part of it. We don't do the days out in the woods because all pilots go through SEER. So if we're training pilots, we need to know what they're going through. We go through it. For jumpers, we can actually go to Army Airborne and do 5 static line jumps, and then we can even progress to go to free fall if we would like to. That's totally optional, unlike SEER. SEER is a you will go TDY. And overall, we're non-rated officer air crew, so we get wings, and we fly backseat of the T6, T-38, and the T-1s. While those are still around, we can hop on one of those flights, just so we are in that flight environment, understand the stressors, the physiological events that can occur in flight, and how to better instruct the pilots so they can go out and execute.
Does that expand on flying in other jets as well? Do you ever fly in like F-16s, F-15s, other dual-seater fighter jets?
Yes. So it depends on your base. The group at Wright-Patterson, they have C-17s, so they can go hop on a C-17 ride. Another buddy of mine from tech school down at Lackland, he can hop on a C-5. I mean, if there's a seat open and you can get on the schedule, you can ride in that aircraft. You just have to go through the proper training to know egress procedures and the oxygen equipment for that specific aircraft. But once you have that training, you're able to fly as long as you can get on the schedule. For the F-16, they have a program called Top Knife. It's currently shut down because they're moving bases, but I think it's a 2-week immersive experience with the F-16s, and you can fly in the backseat of one of those.
So when people are considering AFSCs that they'd like to apply for or be a part of, it's important to consider the day-to-day operations that go into their job. So what is your day-to-day as an aerospace physiologist, specifically at Laughlin Air Force Base, look like?
So everybody's favorite answer, it depends. When we are training, when we've got classes, we are busy, going all day, every day. And then when we don't have classes, the days are quiet. That is when we work on our upgrade training. So the career field, they've got this whole checklist of items that you need to accomplish to be considered upgraded. And then once you're fully upgraded, you can move on to other bases and assignments. But so let's take this upcoming week, for example. Tomorrow, we have nothing on the schedule. So I'll be prepping to teach my first class in our upcoming UPT class that we have starting Friday. So I'll just be going through my slides, practice teaching, things of that nature. Tuesday, same thing, except we have a squadron staff meeting. So every Tuesday, we go to a staff meeting with the squadron, as well as every other flight in the squadron's there, and we just kind of brief the squadron commander of what's going on in our unit, any problems, any upgrades we're doing to anything, if we have equipment out. So we do those Tuesdays with the squadron commander. Then this Wednesday, we have a initial class for, I think they're TAC P guys, so jumpers. We'll run an initial class. It's a 2-day class where we hit them with academics for the first day, and then we'll run them through the chamber the second day. And then Friday starts UPT, so that's a whole day full of teaching. Granted, as the physiologist officer, you don't teach every class. They used to call them officer blocks and enlisted blocks. The enlisted only teach these classes, the officers only teach these classes. Well, now they've changed the verbiage to advanced blocks, so not just officer anymore. And so we have our enlisted force working on getting certified to teach those classes as well. But depending on the class, you could be teaching the whole day, or you can only teach 1 or 2 subjects for that day and have your other airmen be teaching other classes. So really, it all depends. And then you can sprinkle flying in once you get checked off to go fly. You got to fly 4 hours a month, so you squeeze that somewhere in the schedule. And if you're not doing any of those things, you're doing training of some sort, whether that be learning a new position on the chamber or doing reactor training to keep current on adverse reactions. And you never know what your week's going to look like until it happens, because things pop up and you just never know.
So what's some advice that you would give somebody considering a role in aerospace physiology in the future after commissioning in the United States Air Force?
Some advice: make sure you like standing in front of people, because you will be speaking in front of students a lot, whether that be lieutenant colonels or colonels coming in for their 5-year refresher training, or brand new second lieutenants coming out of their commissioning source to be student pilots. I mean, you're always going to be up in front of people. I've had to brief the squadron commander, thrown in it just minutes before the staff meeting started. I'd never seen the slides, so you just have to be confident in your abilities to publicly speak and just get up there and go. Other important notes, you have to have a degree in biology, human biology, biomechanics, kinesiology. You can look at the AFOCD, Air Force Officer Classification. I don't know what the acronym is. Anyways, it's this big PDF that outlines the requirements for each job, specifically focus on the major. So if you have a human science related major, you'll fit the bill coming in. And make sure that you can be on flying status, because there's certain conditions that are waiverable for just being a general line officer in the Air Force, but to be flying status, you need to be able to pass a Type 3 flying class physical. Because 1, you'll be flying an aircraft. 2, the chamber is considered a flight. So you need to be able to stay on flying status, since that's the bulk of the job.
What are some opportunities that lie ahead of you in your career as an aerospace physiologist?
As I mentioned earlier, upgrade training, that takes about 2 years. You can definitely knock it out sooner than that. But once you're fully upgraded, you're qualified to go out to different locations. So in the aerospace physiology world, we have chamber bases. I think there's 11 of us, where you'll be running the chamber and mainly interacting with the student pilots. But then at every other major airbase, we have 2-man teams, an officer and an enlisted personnel. And these two-man teams run the ROBD device for their trainings. And they're the 2 sole guys for that entire base, working with all of the flyers. So there's opportunity to move and go to different bases that are not chamber, which I learned once I came in. Nobody really knew what my job was when I was assigned it, and so I kind of came in blind. But I've learned a lot about it in the past 6 months, And yeah, so the chamber bases are in ATC. Then you can go to those other bases and Combat Command and Global Strike and this and that. And for the operational aspect, there are 2 opportunities that are highly sought after, but if you're lucky enough to get in, the first one is the HAMS mission, so basically high altitude airdrops. I can't tell you the full acronym at this point. But anywhere there's like a C-17 or C-130 doing airdrops from a certain altitude, there will be a physiologist on board because that back's open. All of those people in the back are exposed to that altitude and lack of oxygen. So you have us on board making sure O2 equipment is functioning properly, and you're there in case there's any adverse reactions if somebody's not properly on their equipment. So that's the HAMS mission. And then there's also the HAZER mission, high altitude ISR. And that would be the U2 out at Beale in California. Super cool mission where you're working with the U2 pilots who are suited up in their full pressure suit, more or less a space suit, because this plane goes up to unspecified altitudes. And you suit up the pilot, get him all ready to go. You take him to his plane, you strap him in, set him on his way, and then you're also there to receive him when he lands, him or her, when they land, and you get them out of the aircraft, get them out of their suit, and make sure they're still physiologically doing all right after that flight.
Is there anything else that you would like to talk about? Anything that cadets interested or cadets just wanting to be an officer in general should know?
Yeah, so specific to the job, deploying, if you're looking to deploy, the only option in this career field is as a safety officer. The enlisted deploy a lot more than the officers do. So part of the job, we go to a TDY where we learn all about the safety investigation board's mishaps. And we can serve as a member on that board to investigate a crash or just a mishap that did not result in fatality or significant loss. Because as the physiologist, we understand what can go wrong with the body in the plane. And so we serve on those safety boards, and then we can also deploy as a safety officer.
So with you being a second lieutenant and just coming from Air Force ROTC about like a year or two ago, what is some general advice you would give to people seeking the commission?
So my biggest advice, and I know you've probably heard it in your time in AFROTC, if you've not already, you definitely will by the end. Be a sponge. I mean, it's the best advice to give out. Be a sponge, take in as much information as possible, ask all your dumb questions. I can't tell you the amount of times I've gone to my airman and be like, I have a dumb question. And they're like, what you got, LT? And then I hit them with it, and they're like, oh, easy. And then they tell me the answer. But you don't know anything really going in. And so you just have to be that sponge, soak up all of that knowledge. Your senior enlisted folks, make friends with them because they are going to have the most knowledge. I have a master sergeant in my flight. He's been around. He's signed off on everything you can get signed off on. He knows a thing or two about a thing or two when it comes to aerospace phys. And we're about to lose him here, end of the year. So we're just asking him as much as we can and trying to get all the information out of him that will help us out in the end. So ask those dumb questions. Don't be afraid, and just take up as much knowledge as you can get. Don't go in thinking you know things, because I can assure you, you do not.
I'd like to send a big thank you out to Lieutenant Sidney Pinkham for coming on to Aircast for this episode and talking about aerospace physiology. Now we'll transition to our last segment with Cadet Pilly.
Hello, this is Cadet Pilly here with our 400 interviews, and we're going to be asking them about their AFSCs that they were given 2 weeks ago. Today I have Cadet Lawson, and we'll have a few questions for you. Could you briefly describe your AFSC and what does your role entail?
Yeah, so basically my FSC is 17X, and that is cyberspace operations. So to put it plainly, what cyberspace operation is, or 17X, is everything to do with cybersecurity in that space. Protecting computer systems, anything cyber related. There also could be some offensive or defensive measures in this career field.
All right, thank you. And then, was this your first choice, or did you consider other or multiple career fields?
This was not my first choice. I'm a little different compared to maybe some of the other 400s, as in I was very interested in a lot of different career fields, and I wasn't too keen on any specific career field. But all in all, this was my number 3, and ultimately, after being selected for it, I feel very happy that I received it.
Great, thank you. And then, was your selection process any different from like normal AFSCs? And if so, could you please go into any detail about that?
So about the selection process, it's probably about as basic as you can get. So this is a non-rated career field. And I'm a psychology major, so I have no background in anything cyber security or cyber related at all. So my selection rate was most likely based on needs of the Air Force, might have been one of them, but also whatever I put on my list. Besides that, no other specifics.
Thank you very much. And then another off-topic sort of question, but what are your top 3 places to get stationed at?
I have one specifically overseas, and that is I would love to go to Japan. Something very interesting about cyber, or the most popular shred of cyber, is you can go about anywhere in the world. So I have a lot of things open to me, but besides Japan, I don't have any other specific places, but I would be interested in going somewhere out west in the western United States.
So other than Japan, do you want to go overseas?
I would be, if I would want to, there's no specific base I have a preference to, but if I did want to go overseas, I would want to do it pretty early, and I'll be happy to travel anywhere in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, thank you, Cadet Lawson. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Hello, this is Cadet Pilley with Cadet Moeller, and I'm going to be interviewing him on his AFSC's selection. So, Cadet Moeller, could you please tell me what your AFSC is and what will that role entail?
Yeah, so I got selected for pilot 11X, and that means that I will be going to pilot training. I don't have my private pilot's license, so I'll have to go to IFT, initial flight training, and that's where I'll fly the DA-20 and kind of learn the Air Force way of flying and the military way of flying with stand-ups and learning how to read bold faces, recite them, and study. And then after that, I'll go to undergraduate pilot training, or UPT, and there I'll fly the T6, and then depending on my performance there, either the T1 or the T38, and then move on to my assignment afterwards.
Very cool. Now, you said pilot 11X. Is 11X just another word for like saying you're a pilot, or are there multiple different types of pilots?
Yeah, so there's a couple different types of pilots. For 11X, the X just means like it's undefined for what the shred is, and the shred will kind of be determined by performance at UPT. So I want to be a fighter pilot, so that would be like 11F, and then whatever airframe I have, there'd be some extra stuff at the end of that. I think 11B is for bomber pilot, and then I don't know what the ones for like cargo is. Probably 11C for cargo. I don't know.
Very cool. And then did you consider like any other career fields? Are you pretty dead set on becoming a pilot?
Yeah, so when I first joined ROTC, I was definitely like going straight for pilot. When I was going up for rated and had like an AFSC talk with our previous detachment commander, Colonel Andina, that's when I kind of looked into some other ones. Definitely was interested in pilot still. Like that was my number one choice. But I didn't want to just have that be like the only thing that I knew about. So I wanted to learn a little bit more about the other career fields, because there's a very real possibility that needs of the Air Force might determine that I need something else. And I'd rather know a little bit more about the career fields I could get put into. And that way I have a little bit more of appreciation for some of the other people that are in that career field as well.
Great, thank you. And then what was your selection process like for your AFSC?
So for rated, there's 4 rated positions. There's pilot, CISO, ABM, and then RPA. And you'll go up for a rated board in the spring of your AS300 year. And it kind of just takes like a screenshot of all your information. And that is like your GPA, your commander's ranking, your field training ranking, your PFA. And then for pilot, it's your PICSM. And your PICSM is an acronym for Pilot Candidate Selection Method. And that's kind of a gonkulation of your pilot score on the AFOQT, and then how well you do on the TBAS, which is the test of basic aviation skills, which I took with Cadet Hall and Cadet Calhoun at Wright Pat. And then if you're doing CISO, it'll just take your AFOQT score for the nav section, and then for ABM, it just takes your AFOQT for the ABM section. And then for RPA, I can't remember. It might be still your PICSM, but otherwise it'd be your pilot section for the RPA. And then you'll go up for that. They'll determine how many slots they have, and then everybody has an order of merit, so it'll add up all those numbers. You'll just get one number for kind of your overall score, and then they'll say, sweet, we can only take 400 pilots, so the 400 highest scores, you guys got a pilot slot, and everybody else, sorry.
It sounds very competitive, but good job on that.
Thank you.
And then, so what attracted you to becoming a pilot? You have like any like childhood experiences?
Not really. This is honestly kind of a new thing for me. When I started getting into college, I started in aerospace engineering, and I've always been kind of interested in aviation. Like, I flew drones and built like racing drones and stuff when I was a little younger, like throughout high school. But the biggest thing that kind of pulled me towards Air Force and like aviation with the Air Force is the culture. Pilots tend to be pretty competitive about stuff, and growing up I wasn't very competitive, but I wanted to be around people that were going to push me to better myself and do things faster and more efficiently and just better overall, and that's really the thing that kind of drew me to that. Plus, flying is awesome. I love it so much. It's a good time.
I'm sure. And then the final question is, what are your top 3 places to get stationed at?
Oh, heck yeah. All right, so the colonel just told me that NJEP results should be dropping pretty soon in the next week or two. So number 1, hopefully I could go to Shepherd for pilot training. That has like the NJEP program, which is kind of a fast track to fighters, which is pretty sweet. Otherwise, I'd like to go to Vance, and then Columbus would be next. But operationally, I'd like to go to Alaska. I think they got F-22s up there. That'd be cool. I like Alaska. I like the base probably more than the aircraft because I want to fly the F-16. Alaska would be sweet. Overseas would be cool, like in Germany, or even in I'm blanking on the name right now for the one in Japan. Kadena. Kadena would be pretty cool. Kadena, yeah, that one would be sweet.
Awesome. And then so I just want to ask another question. You've mentioned NJEP. For those who don't know, what is that?
NJEP is Euro-NATO Joint Jet Pilot Training. So it's kind of a different curriculum than the normal UPT. So that one, everybody at NJEP will fly the T-38. So they'll go T-6s and then go into the T-38. And it's super selective. I think they're probably only going to have like 20 to 30 slots like nationwide this year because those class sizes are going down because the fighter trainer units are really backed up right now. But that's it's a really cool mission set. They're integrating kind of joint force stuff too, so it's not just going to be student pilots from the United States. There's going to be some of our NATO allies there too. Okay. So a couple student pilots from Germany or like Italy, other countries, Canada. So that's pretty sweet. And you can also get like an instructor pilot that's from Germany or Australia or some other country in NATO, which is pretty neat.
Yeah. Well, I hope you look forward to those results coming out soon.
For sure.
Thank you very much, Cadet Muller. Appreciate you.
Yep.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Cadet Billy.
I am going to be interviewing Cadet Hall, who is in the Space Force. So we will be questioning her about SFFCs. Cadet Hall, could you please tell me what the SFSC selection process is like for you?
Yeah, so for me, what's going to happen is I'll commission in May of 2025, and then I'll go to Peterson Space Force Base down in Colorado in September, and I'll participate in the officer training course. So that's about a year-long process where we're going to do 4 months of cyber training, 4 months of space ops training, and 4 months of intel to kind of get the well-rounded Space Force Guardian training style going. And then based on our preferences and kind of how we rack and stack within our class, we'll drop one of those 3 jobs. And then after that, we'll actually end up going to more job-specific training and then an ops tour.
Very cool. And then you said, how many SFC jobs are there?
Yeah, so there are 5 for the Space Force. We have intel, acquisitions, cyber, space ops, and engineering.
And then which one are you going for?
Hopefully cyber. I really like comp sci. I really like my degree, so I'm hoping that that'll line up well.
Very cool. So Space Force is still a smaller branch of the military, but there are still plenty of places to get stationed at. Do you have 3 in mind?
Yes. I'll definitely end up at Peterson Space Force Base for quite a while. That's usually where a lot of the fresh new lieutenants go. Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado would be really sick. I got to go there this past summer, and it was a beautiful base. And then Cape Canaveral, I think that's a really cool one. We do a lot of launch sites out of there, so that would be a cool mission to support.
Very cool. And then, final question for you. What are you looking forward most to, just like in your training and then also after getting your job?
I think that what I'm looking forward to the most is just actually getting to, lead and, work with people. I think that's going to be really exciting to kind of see what role lieutenants actually take on in the military, especially coming from the Air Force side to the Space Force, where we're a lot smaller, so we're going to be a little bit more hands-on and tech-based than the current Air Force officers are, and so I think that's going to be something that's really exciting to work with.
Very cool. All right. Thank you very much, Cadet Hall.
Of course.
Hello, this is Cadet Pilly here with Cadet Hickey, and today I'll be asking him about his AFSC and sort of what that will look like. And so Cadet Hickey, could you please briefly describe your AFSC and what that sort of role will entail?
Hi, I'm Cadet Hickey. My AFSC I got selected for was 13 November, which is Nuclear and Missile Operations Officer. I don't know too much about this AFSC because I had it a little bit lower on my list. However, after talking to some people and looking into it, it seems like a pretty cool experience. I get to have kind of a free schedule. So first couple, about a week or two, I'm down in a bunker practicing simulations, doing exercises to prepare for possible nuclear deterrence, working on all that. And then the rest of the month, I'm either working in an office or I'm on my own free time. At least that's what I was told. So it sounds like a good opportunity.
Nice, yeah. And then, you think this was your first choice, or did you consider other career fields?
My first 4 choices I had were all the rated spots.
Okay.
So this was actually my 5th choice. It was the thing I wanted to do most if I didn't get a rated spot. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Nice. And then, so what are you looking forward to most about your AFSC?
Thing I'm looking forward to most about my FSC is probably the base locations. So after my 6-month training in California at Vandenberg Space Force Base or Air Force Base, there's 3 possible locations I can go to for 13 Novembers. That's in Maelstrom Air Force Base, which is in Montana, Minot Air Force Base, which is in North Dakota, or F.E. Warren, which is in Wyoming. Personally, I want to go to Montana because I think anywhere out west is the coolest. So I wouldn't be mad about the other 2, but Montana, man, my dad talks about Montana all the time, and I really just want to go out there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Would you say you work with a lot of the other branches of the military, or is this mostly an Air Force related job?
I'm fairly certain this is just an Air Force related job. Like when I'm down in that bunker, I'll be working with other Air Force officers down there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Great. Thank you very much, Cadet Hickey.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. This is Cadet Pilly. I'm here with Cadet Brown, a 400 at Det 665, and I've got a few questions for him, asking him about his AFSC. So, Cadet Brown, could you briefly describe your AFSC and sort of what that role will entail?
So I'm 17X, so that's the cyberspace officer. So there's multiple different roles you get for it. The 4 main are going to be the offensive and defensive cyber warfare. That's like a smaller career field within cyberspace. And then the other 2 are the expeditionary comms, which just set up general comms in overseas remote locations, trying to set up those networks. And then you have the regular IT comms, which is just general IT. Is super broad, and majority of people do kind of go down that route of cyberspace.
Now, of those certain fields of IT, do you want to choose any of them specifically?
Offensive cyber warfare. Definitely want to be a certified hacker.
Very cool. So, out of all your AFSCs, was this your first choice, or did you consider any other career fields?
Yeah, this is my first choice. I looked at Intel, that was another one, and then contracting was another one I was kind of interested in, but I really wanted a cyber.
Does cyber have to do with your major at all?
Yeah, since I'm going through my master's of IT, I kind of want to at least keep my major and career the same thing, but I would have been happy with the other top 3 I had.
Very cool. And then, was your selection process different from any other normal AFSCs, or sort of, I guess, normal?
It was about normal. There wasn't really anything too big. The only difference is we don't know what our career is going to be until about halfway through tech school. That's kind of where we go into those different categories that I talked about with like the 4 different areas. Then that kind of determines where we're going to be at in our career.
Okay. And then what would you say like attracted you to this AFSC, or maybe just cybersecurity in general?
I always growing up as a kid wanting to be a hacker, always playing video games and oh, there goes a hacker in the game. And just always seemed interesting to figure out how to do. And just messing around with computers and technology has always been kind of fun for me. Plus, it's also good in civilian world too, so I could, if I wanted to leave for some reason, then I have a good job in civilian sector.
Very cool. And final question for you. What are your top 3 places to get stationed at?
That's a tough one. I want to go overseas or somewhere like Hawaii. Mm-hmm. Pearl Harbor Hickman would be cool. Or probably Florida or California. Someplace new I haven't really been to. Maybe Colorado or something.
Okay. Very cool. All right. Thank you very much, Cadet Brown.
We hope that you have enjoyed this production of Aircast, presented to you by your Detachment 665 Fall Semester 2024 Public Affairs Team. Air Power.